My name is Natalie, and this is my fellow Little Steps colleague and teammate, Shay.
Hello.
This is our first sit-down session for Little Steps Facebook Live, so please send us in your questions and comments at any time throughout the chat. Today we're going to be talking about a very controversial topic which affects children of all ages, bullying. And to lead us on this session is mom and psychologist Dr. Zaidi from Mind and Life. Hello, Dr. Zaidi.
Hi.
Thanks for doing this chat with us. And please can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and about Mind and Life?
Right, so I'm originally from the UK. I've been in Asia for 15 years now, between Singapore and Hong Kong. And I'm a mum of 2 children, and I've been working in Hong Kong as a clinical psychologist for the past 5 years.
Cool.
Mind and Life is, a psychology practice, and I have 2 very wonderful colleagues that work with us and work with me, and between us we cover, looking after young children to teens, to families, couples and individuals. So we provide a whole range of therapeutic services for the whole family, including educational assessments as well.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah.
So today, can you help us to define what bullying is?
Okay, so the definition, the most commonly used definition of bullying that I came up with was that it is defined as a repeated interpersonal behavior, typically between children or with unequal power. So the repeated is important. And it is intended to do physical or psychological harm. It isn't just teasing. There is a difference between teasing and bullying, because if it is a one-off event, you can put it away. But if it is repeated, that's when it is bullying.
Okay.
That's when it is. That's what bullying is.
As far as kind of bullying goes, I think many people assume when we talk about it that it's more to do with teenagers, but it does start in younger years too, right?
Agreed. So again, looking at the statistics and how they've been measuring in research, bullying, the youngest one they were looking at 2.
Wow.
Up to 17, yeah. So I found that, so having done research for this interview, it was interesting for me to know that as well. But what I see in my office and what's more prevalent is it's just before they enter in the, I think 7 to 8 years old, that's when it really kind of is happening. And then obviously up to the ages of, 17, 18.
I suppose that age is when you're starting to be affected by what other people think.
Yes, absolutely, totally. So that's when it is. So it is, what I see, what I notice, it's kind of 7 onwards.
Okay,
yeah.
7 onwards.
Yeah.
As far as I guess the history of bullying, there's been a lot of changes, obviously, with the devices and such.
Yeah.
Do you feel that bullying is as big of an issue today as it was, say, 10 years ago?
Well, again, looking at the studies and statistics and research, general trend seemed to have been downwards in the schools.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay.
From 28 to 23% at 10 years, over the 10-year period.
And is that a global stat, or is that...
that's from America.
Okay.
That's from Europe and America. I haven't got the stats in
Okay.
Asia, yeah? Whereas from 2007 to 2016, cyberbullying has doubled. So, I mean, again, that's not a surprise.
Yeah.
So if you're looking at the overall trend, I think if you take cyberbullying, because it wasn't reported, we are new to it, we are the cyber immigrants and our children are the cyber citizens, right?
Yeah.
So we are just putting in things in place. So because of that, I would say that the trend is still upwards, because we haven't really taken the cyberbullying part into account.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
So this is a bit of a bigger question, I guess, but and I think we'll touch on it throughout the interview process. But the typical warning signs of bullying, your child being bullied, what would you say those would be?
You have to recognize if there is any change in the behavior. If they are beginning to feel sad, or if they are beginning to give up activities that they used to like and are not liking, or if they're not going into the social situations, if there is a specific day when they're saying that they don't want to go to school, tummy ache, you know, that kind of, depending on the age of the child, avoiding going to school or avoiding social situations which they normally wouldn't. Appetite is sometimes impacted, sleep is impacted, you know, they tend to have more nightmares sometimes. So you really have to watch out for behavioural signs and how their affect is or what their mood is like. And if a child is generally a happy child and suddenly doesn't quite fit how they normally are, then it's worth investigating.
Outside of cyberbullying, which occurs obviously on devices, and a lot of it's anonymous, where do you see most of the bullying occur? At school, on the bus? Where are you seeing most of this?
Because children spend a lot of the time in school, less time at home, depending on the child of the age of the child, they are spending more time in school than they spend it at home. So it does happen in school or on the bus or in low traffic areas, for example, in the hallways, or even the kids know in the playground where the corner is, where there's not going to be supervision by the teachers, you see. So it's those low traffic areas in school or on the bus as well.
So we want to touch on the 4 different types of bullying in a bit more detail. Perhaps we can start with verbal bullying. Can you help us define what that is?
Yeah, sure. So the verbal bullying is the use of words, statements, name calling to gain power over a target, basically. So it is, you know, again, research shows us that verbal bullying and name calling can leave. Actually, that's the most, that's the one that's difficult to say whether it's just banter, whether you're just joking. When it becomes really hurtful, or even if you feel hurt as a child, you have to be able to just say that, stop, I don't like it. Because that's the one that can stay for a long time.
I think that would be the harder one to, as a parent, to also recognise.
Agreed. To know whether it was just a one-off or, you know, whether it continues. And it really is how that child feels, and giving your child a voice for that one is very important.
Okay, so then that's a good tip. Are there other specific tips for parents who see their kids that may be getting bullied in this way?
Yeah, it really is important. You know, this one, the most important is giving them a voice so that they stand up for themselves, and not only stand up for themselves but mean it. You know, when they say stop it, you don't just say stop it, you say stop it, right? So people, it's the tonality, it's your body language that the other child or the other person knows that, you know, they need to stop it.
And it's not going to continue on repeatedly. I think that is a sign, like a confidence thing as well, isn't it, for the person bullying to kind of know that they're not getting their way, and so they might not repeat it.
Agreed.
So physical bullying, this is one of the most, I suppose, obvious of the 4, I would assume, and I just wondered what, if you could describe that in more detail.
Yeah, it is when you're physically, you know, hurting somebody, and you know, and to gain power, again, to gain power, and it is a mismatch of your, you know, you're trying to control some kind of situation there. And again, you know, if that's happening in the school, this is the one which is difficult. I have a son, and it's a difficult one to see because, you know, they get bruised on the playground. Anyways, right? They play football. They play, you know, they are rough on the playground. They can be rough on the playground, and you don't know whether it was
crossed the line.
When is that line crossed? And again, I think open communication with your children and being able to identify, you know, what's going on for them is very important. And again, it's difficult. That's a difficult line to as a parent to go into and really identify that somebody did that deliberately once, twice, and when do you stop them, right? And this is where you involve the school. For sure. This is where you start talking to the school, because the physical part has to stop. And again, empowering your child to be able to say no. That's very important.
So the third one is relationship building. I just wondered if you could define this for us.
This is, you know, and I think we'll identify maybe a particular gender with this one, not that I'm saying that it's boys, but relational bullying, or bullying with excluding others.
I see.
Yes. So deliberately preventing someone from joining or being part of a group. whether it's lunch table or a game or sport or social activity, or your child is the only one who isn't invited to the birthday party from a particular group, and then that happens over and over again, that they feel left out.
Yeah, definitely. That's horrendous. What are the tips for parents dealing with kids having this bullying scenario?
This is where where us as parents need to build them up emotionally, and create more nourishing activities for them, and build up their self-esteem and resilience for them, so that they feel good about themselves. And if people are excluding them, that they don't think that it's them personally that's being attacked. So that one is a difficult one too.
As a parent, how do you not say something to another parent or to the child? Like, it's really, I think we can all relate to that one, I suppose, the most, and we all know that feeling of feeling kind of left out or not fitting in. And so I don't know how.
That doesn't only happen in young kids, right?
Yeah,
in adults
still
as well.
Yeah.
Yes, where you're part of a group and you don't get invited to something, or deliberately being excluded. So yeah, it's tough. It's a tough one. Maybe those friends aren't worth having. I don't know.
I know, but then how do you do that at such a young age?
It is I guess one question is that the bullying, because you've mentioned that bullying is the repeat, right? So you didn't get invited to that birthday party, but is it, how would you define the repeat version of that? Is that just not invited to the school table at lunch, and you just kind of need to move on and find a different table, different friends? Is that kind of what's...
Yes.
Yeah.
Usually that's what it is, because they're really not your friends.
Right.
If that's what's
Yeah. Okay.
My daughter's in year 1, and at school the teacher moves the table settings around quite regularly. I think that's quite a good thing, in the classroom.
Yeah.
So that you don't kind of get aligned to 1 or 2 people and then you kind of stick to them. And so if you do get left out, it's really noticeable. Because if you move around, you've got to kind of socialise with people that, all the classmates, for example. So
and the other thing that schools are very good at doing that, if a child is being excluded, and some of the teachers do this regularly, that if they're given the opportunity to do the group work, it's the teacher who will allocate the groups rather than giving the children the choice to do that, so they don't get left out. So again, it's worth approaching the school with this if it's happening, because at least in the classroom they don't feel left out.
I think it's sometimes an awareness thing on the other side as well. So you might not be aware that your child is excluding the other kids, or that kind of thing as well. So as soon as sometimes there is a conversation with the school, or that could change things as well.
Agreed. Yes.
So I'm going to touch on a very, very hot topic, which is the cyberbullying, which is the 4th form, the newest of the bullying forms, and it is one of the biggest problems right now, because it can be done anonymously, and it can be done 24/7, and it can be done behind a screen. So it's easy to hide behind, which is unfortunate. But maybe if you could just kind of describe cyberbullying in more detail.
Sure. So it is bullying in the cyberspace, right? It involves haranguing someone by spreading mean words, lies about them, and text messages, social media. It can be, there's exclusion again that happens within that, because you could just form another group and not include that particular person on sleepover and that kind of stuff. There's all these words that came up, flaming. It's fighting that involves sending angry, cruel, rude, vulgar messages to one individual, several individuals in private or public online setting. And happy slapping, it's attacking an individual physically as a prank or joke, while others attack or take pictures, or it's distributed or posted online. Harassment, of course, that's sending ongoing series of harmful, hurtful messages. And you can pretend to be somebody else and post, as that person, and ruin that person's reputation. And that one, again, that has ended up in my office. Outing or posting material online about a person that contains sensitive private information. It's so easy to take that screenshot and forward it on. Text wars and attacks, and hounding a targeted individual with a high amount of mean text messages and emails. So again, making them feel really awful.
Yeah.
But again, you've got to remember it has to be repeated.
Yes. Okay. Yeah.
So it's not just that one-off thing, but even at that, I mean,
It can do a lot of damage even.
Yeah.
It's not acceptable. It's not
Yeah.
acceptable at all. Yeah.
There's a lot of social media channels out there, a lot of devices.
Yeah.
What are you seeing as kind of the most prevalent channels that people are getting bullied on right now?
It's what's most popular at that moment in time. There was an app called Ask FM, and I think that's been shut down.
Okay.
That was quite prevalent about 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay.
At the moment, what I hear is what they're using the most is Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp.
Okay.
Yeah, those are the 3 that I'm aware of that gets used the most.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
How would you say that? I mean, this is a more difficult one to kind of recognize. I guess you look for the same kind of things that you mentioned earlier. But how would you say that you would tips for recognizing if your child is getting cyberbullied?
Yeah. The thing is that, again, watching out for their reaction once they are on the phone and off the phone.
Yeah.
And if they used to be happier, they would come and share whatever they'd seen on Facebook or Instagram. If we have that kind of, and we should have that kind of relationship with our kids where they can share. Because sharing their online life is as important as sharing their offline life. Because we are aware of what they talk about, what they're interested in with their friends in real life, but we are not as much aware of what's going on online in their lives. So being aware of that is very important, and then noticing again any emotional behavioural changes in response to, or if they're not on the screen at all, or if they're spending more time looking for things and being left out. So just being aware of that is very important.
Just kind of a side note on that. I know a lot of parents, because a lot of the social medias are very new, a lot of times parents don't even know what they are, what they're capable of. But do you see, do you have like recommended ages around getting phones or devices? Because I know this question comes up a lot, but what is kind of your statement on that? You have to be careful. I know.
Okay, right. So
we didn't prep you for this one.
No, you didn't, and that's perfectly fine because I do a talk on this. And I'm really, really passionate about raising awareness of, the screen time and our kids. Right. So the recommended guidelines are under the ages of 3, there should be no screen time. And but if you're talking to what they have said, the American Association of Pediatrics in October last year, they changed that to as long as they're just talking to grandparents or being, doing the FaceTime, that is okay. But other than that, you should have no exposure up until ages of 3. Between the ages of 3 and 10, it's about half an hour to an hour entertainment time, and then above that it's about 2 hours. But we're talking entertainment time. We're not talking about the homework and all the rest of it that's on the computers now. So but again, it really depends on the discretion of the parents, and you have to be. I can't emphasize. You have to be aware of what your kids are doing online. How they're spending that time. The example I always use is that you wouldn't send out your child at 11 o'clock in the playground. Right. Why are they online talking to their friends or whomever?
At that time.
So just being aware of that. Just bringing in your normal parenting strategy. Whatever you do in real life, just transfer it over to. Just because we didn't grow up with this doesn't mean that we stop being parents. And being able to say no. So. When should they have the phone? Well, my 10-year-old has a brick Nokia phone because he takes taxis now at the moment, and he needs to text me the taxi number.
It's a Nokia, like the old school Nokias?
Yes.
I have heard of a lot of parents doing this, going back, and I hear they're hard to find.
Yes, very hard to find. But it is a means of communication, right?
Because it is necessary, but it doesn't have access to the other entertainment. It serves the purpose. So that is an alternative that I've heard a lot of parents using. That you want that safety.
Of course. So if he needs to call me, he should
He's
be
got
able to-
access,
he's
yeah.
got
We just need to
access.
have some resources on where to get these old school vintage items.
I always say, you know, I don't know where my husband got it, but
Yeah.
he found it somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah.
So it's
Like
not
computer
that hard.
science.
Yeah, I think there's somewhere like that. Yes, exactly.
Never let us down.
Yeah.
Yes.
So just to remind you guys that we are here today with Dr. Zaidi from Mind and Life, and it's our first Little Steps live kind of discussion where we're covering the topic of bullying, and we're just kind of asking around the different topics that fall under bullying, and obviously some tips from Dr. Zaidi herself. So I suppose we now want to turn the table a bit and talk about the bully instead of kind of being bullying. So what if your child is actually the one that's doing the bullying? How would you recommend dealing with this, and what are things that you definitely do not want to do when you get the information that your child is the bully?
I think that's really hard for the parents whose kids are
Yeah.
bullies. You know, it is. It's a really hard one. But just talking with your child, finding out what's going on, and you know, what's the need
Yeah.
for him or her to be doing this. Because bullying is a behavior, it can be changed.
Yeah.
You can teach your children to change it, but just identifying what's going on and, you know, being able to talk to them about that. And then making sure that there isn't anything underlying, you know, something else that's going on, so a learning disability or something else,
okay.
right? So there isn't what's going on for the child, finding that out, and then having the consequences, you know,
For
Yes.
behaviour.
Yeah.
because it is a behaviour
Yeah.
and it can be changed. And you don't want, I haven't met anybody who's okay with their child being
Right.
bullied.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's something that's really, really hard for parents.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
it's a really difficult one because you want to support them,
Yeah,
but at the same time you're not obviously supporting that particular behaviour.
agreed. The other one is teaching them empathy. Very important. Their, you know, their empathy and also compassion.
Yeah.
And
So hard things to teach. Too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
really hard. But the other one is, you know, doing a role play and you acting as the bully. You know, how would you feel
Yes. Yeah. That's a
if
good
this
tip.
happened to you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's very, very important for the children to recognize that, you know, this is how the other person feels. But bullies lack empathy usually.
Okay.
And that's what
Makes
we
sense,
need to change with our kids and
Yeah.
teach them the empathy. Schools are very good at doing this actually. You know,
Yeah.
the education system here, my experience has been that, you know, they focus on teaching kids to be empathetic.
Yeah.
It's definitely a skill for life. It's a hard one.
Yeah.
If you miss it, it affects
Exactly.
you.
Eventually maybe talking to the school if you
Yeah.
really notice that something is going on, and maybe talking to the class teacher just
Yeah.
to be able to keep an eye
Yeah.
if you've noticed something.
Yeah.
And again, you know, depending on the teacher and the school, they are very good at introducing the topic and being, you know, taught
Broader
as a- yeah.
about.
So it doesn't become about the child, but, you know, everybody becomes aware of.
Sometimes it's like an underline. I know the one evening my daughter snapped at my son, and I got such a fright, and I was like, wow, like what made you say that? Is somebody talking to you like that? And then she said yes. And I was like, wow, okay, well we need to talk about that. So it's kind of like there was an underlying reason why someone was obviously making her feel bad in the way they were speaking to her, and then she kind of was easy target to take it out on her younger brother when he was annoying her, and it was thankfully that's what she kind of, I saw it and she said it straight away so we could kind of break it down.
Yeah.
But there is something normally underlying in that person
Yeah.
to be getting frustrated
Yeah.
and and I suppose to kind of repeat the behaviour to somebody else.
Exactly, and this is where we, us as parents, we need to we are the role models. We have
Yeah.
to model the behaviours we want to see with our kids. Going back to technology and, you know, use of technology, we have to model the behaviours
Yeah.
with the technology that we want to see in our kids. Same
Yeah.
with, you know, how we treat others.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah.
We have a question that was submitted that kind of goes along with this.
Mhm.
Are schools educating kids and parents on bullying prevention? What are good ways schools could do more of this? Are you
My-
seeing this in Hong Kong?
My experience, look, I can't speak for all the schools in Hong Kong, but my experience has been, or what I get told in here, that once it's raised, you know, schools effectively deal with it
Mhm.
in Hong Kong, as far as I'm aware. Now, I don't know whether that's all the international schools or local schools. I'm not sure, but
Yeah,
you know, of what I know of, yes. And it does depend on the teacher. It depends on what the policy of the school is. It really depends on a whole host of things. But my experience has been, you know, what little I do know, that it does get dealt with effectively.
Yeah. I think too, with being such a hot topic and the fact that there's Facebook forums and all of these different things now, if you don't deal, it's like PR, right? If you
Yeah.
don't deal with the issue as a school,
Exactly.
people will talk about it in other places. It's
Yeah.
So I think it is quite important. This kind of goes along the line, but I think and I actually just recently went through this with my 7-year-old. You know, if there is a bully, or your child is being bullied, or maybe your child is the bully, what is the protocol that is recommended? Because there is that first, you know, feeling if your child's getting bullied that you want to go talk to the parents or talk to this bully that's bullying you or making your child cry, or you know, there's this kind of, you know, protective mom or protective dad, but that is not always the best way to do it. Yeah, I think there is a protocol that should be in place, because like you said, you don't know what's going on in the bully's life and that kind of thing. What would you recommend for parents to kind of the steps?
If it's happened on the school premises, then it's very, very simple, right? You involve the school,
Right.
and you take it further there.
Right.
If it hasn't happened on the school, then it's a difficult one.
Right,
It
okay.
depends on the child. It depends on the family. It depends.
Right.
And talking to your child is most important.
Yes,
Giving
yeah.
them the tools to be
Yeah.
able to deal with it.
Yeah.
But obviously stepping in when it's needed. But as I say, most likely happens on the school ground because they spend a lot of time
Yep.
in school.
Yep. Yep.
So yeah, involving the teacher and then taking it
Yeah.
higher up
Yeah.
as needed.
Yeah.
And it does depend on the teacher. If they are, you know, able to see it, it will finish very
Right.
quickly.
Yeah.
And it doesn't need to escalate, but it, you know, sometimes it does.
Yeah, I felt that's exactly how we dealt with it in that situation.
Yeah.
And what was interesting is that the school did a full investigation, which I thought was the right way of doing it, because it's not always what the kids say, it's not always how it all pans out, and it all ended. And it was interesting though, just the way that it was approached with the full investigation rather than just attack. You know. So.
No, it is. It's. I mean, they need to hear it from everybody.
Yep.
And you know, whoever has seen what's going on and they get the full picture. It's you know, it's quite effective that
Yep.
way. Yeah.
I suppose it's a really good thing that it's become a lot more, as we were saying this morning, a better spoken about topic bullying now. And there's been
Yes.
a lot of kind of people, celebrities and stuff like that have been standing up to talk about it and to make people more aware. So it seems like a bit of an easier topic to kind of talk about instead of where it was really hush hush and that was created more of an issue.
Yeah.
So it kind of helps us to talk about it. But wrapping up, before we kind of take on any more questions that have come through, in your opinion, do you think there's a way for a child to avoid being bullied?
Yes. I don't, look, it can happen to
So,
anybody at any stage of their life, right? It doesn't have to be the playground scenario.
Yeah.
I'm sure in our working lives we've come across many bullies as well, right? But it's you know, being a good role model, I think, giving them the voice, and looking out for the signs, and talking to them. I think open communication with your children is very important, and talking about things like bullying and cyberbullying is important, so that they know what to do about it, and you know, empowering them and educating them is very important. So that's the best we can do as parents, really.
That's those are good tips and advice. And do you have any final thoughts for parents on bullying before we open it up for the questions?
I just wanted to read out something that a grade 5 had written.
Oh, cool.
And I wonder whether, you know, that would, and that then links into us as parents. So if it's okay, I'll just read that out.
Definitely.
So basically this is about, you know, somebody who's online and somebody who's in school, and just asking, what would you want the adults to know?
Okay.
Okay. I want them to know that the punishment does not fit the crime. Giving a student detention does nothing but get them more mad. They in turn tell their friends, and now they turn against you. You are left out of groups and feel very isolated. This is where thoughts of killing themselves come into play. You feel no one understands, and you feel very alone. Between Facebook, texting, Formspring, Twitter, Instagram, you are an outcast in minutes. It is very lonely. And that's from a grade 5, so that's a 10-year-old who's writing that. So for us as parents and for the adults in their lives, we have to be aware of what's going on in their online lives, as I said, and generally in their lives, because for somebody to be feeling like that, so alone, you know, it's not right. So for
And I
us,
suppose dealing with it, as he's saying, and well, he or she, as the student's saying,
Yeah.
dealing with it in the right way can make the biggest difference, because
Absolutely.
as he's saying, like if you just punish that person, they're going to just get revenge,
Yeah.
and it could come back and make things worse.
Absolutely.
So I think that is the hardest part as a parent, is kind of knowing which way to do that, and trying to keep that open communication with your child is really, really important.
Yeah, agreed. So that's
Cool.
And that leads in a little bit. We've just had a question through from Verena, who feels that she's not being supported by the school. How can you deal with that as a parent?
You see, that's a difficult one, because you know each school has their own different policy, and it's a tough one, really.
They can, as parents, come to see you here at Mind and Life. They can, I suppose, bring in to help with communication between themselves and their child, and then get some advice from you with regards to how they could open up communication with the school and try and get support.
Yeah.
They could do that with you.
Sorry, this was a question from Singapore.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, perhaps resources
Yeah.
in Singapore we could recommend.
Oh, I see what you mean. Sorry. Yeah, I think that you could probably find similar kind of services that are available that allow you to do the same thing as you can do here with Dr. Zaidi. But I think sometimes it's better to give kids a space to be able to communicate, and then give you the confidence and the same message as a parent and a child to then be able to approach the school. But I know here in Hong Kong, you could also help them to kind of put those forward, and they'd have to.
I'm wondering if the question could be more on if you are a parent and you are at a school in Singapore or wherever, and you definitely are not feeling like you're getting the support. It's just not there. What would you recommend for that parent? You would go see someone to get some help, or is there other things that you could?
You could go and see someone to get help, or maybe you haven't found the right person in the school.
Yeah, there could be.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Because
it sounds like this went up to the principal, and that there's an issue of they don't believe the parent.
Oh, okay.
I think, it's also Verena's saying that her child has not mentioned the bullying, but she's seen it for herself. So she knows it's happening. But would you then advise that, perhaps seeing someone would bring that out of the child and therefore make it easier to deal with?
Yeah. If the child is not recognizing it, then it becomes harder, right?
The communication's
keeping it
not
from
there,
you,
right?
yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. So I wonder what else is going on then.
And maybe a neutral situation where they can go and see a psychologist would help the child feel confident to
talk about it.
Yeah. Any other questions?
Yeah, we have another question from Elizabeth. What is the best solution if there's a much older bully on the playground rather than school? The parents aren't around. So what's the action there? If you're talking to either the helper or the child directly, how do you communicate back to the parents so that this doesn't happen? Or is it just a matter of she wants to know, is it better just to leave the playground and avoid that child?
Yeah, possibly, unless you don't know who the parents are again, and maybe talking to the child and just engaging with the child, just getting them to.
You mean the child, the potential bully, or the
yes. If you are there and you're seeing that, and maybe just asking them to stop, or getting them to recognize that this is unacceptable behavior. I'm not sure. It does really depend on how often you've seen the child, or if you just met them that one time. I just remove myself from my child.
Yeah, I think this is sounds like it's more a frequent ongoing thing.
Ongoing thing, then then maybe engaging more with the child, and eventually maybe even with the parents if the parents aren't there, and talking to them. That would be helpful.
Cool.
We have another question here. Are there any legal areas we need to be concerned about when reporting bullying?
Within Hong Kong,
I think Asia.
Yeah, Asia. Maybe
Asia.
Hong Kong too.
I'm not very familiar with the legalities of bullying in Asia. It's never had to get to that. With the cyberbullying, yes,
Okay.
absolutely.
Yeah.
That's a very different. You do have to. I've been working with kids where we've had to report it to the police. A lot of you do report it to the police with the cyberbullying, absolutely. If there is a predator involved or if there's that kind of stuff going on, then yes, you have to report that online kind of stuff. Absolutely. But I guess it would have to get really physical for you to report it to the police. Yeah. But yeah, on the forums on cyberbullying, yes, absolutely. There are many websites and cases where you report it internationally. Yeah. Yeah, that's something you don't.
Yeah, I suppose they can. It's tracking and stuff that they are able to control a little bit more than other scenarios.
Yeah, we just have one last question to wrap it up. Is there likely to be any long-term effects on children who are bullied?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. So there was a longitudinal study that was done in Finland between the ages. They started with 8-year-olds, and they then did their final kind of, it's ongoing, but 29-year-olds. So they collected data from about 5,000 children. And 90% of kids who were not involved in any kind of bullying, only 12% had, some psychological or psychiatric disorder before the ages of 30. Whereas 20% of those who were bullies as children had mental health problems. 23% of kids who were victims of frequent bullies had mental health problems. And the worst one was where the 8-year-olds who were frequently bullies and were bullied themselves. So that was 31%. They had mental health challenges. So yeah, it does. What are the the highest rate was depression, anxiety disorder, and substance abuse. So that's what that particular study showed. So yeah, it does have long-term impact. Definitely on the mental health of bullies and people who are bullied, for sure.
Wow, it's been really good to have this time with you. So thank you very much today, and thank you for writing in for all the questions and for joining us on our chat today with Dr. Zaidi from Mind and Life about the controversial topic of bullying. We look forward to catching you soon on a Next Little Steps live chat. Please let us know if there's any particular topics you would like us to cover. And any other feedback, or if you have any ongoing questions. Thanks very much.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.